Добрый день, коллеги.
Good morning, colleagues. We are so very busy, and it was a fruitful discussion with Mr. Nasri, and we will not be having any break because this plenary session is a follow-up of the previous discussion. FinTech is highly popular for the communities and in these sectors, and we are raising a few of the issues. And when there are questions asked, answers will have to be given. We will be talking about immersive FinTech. What is it actually? It is all-pervading innovation when you are inside the innovations, you are immersed into them, you make use of the innovations, and the digital world is of such an intensity when there is digital detox, when you have to do without innovations for and digital technologies for some time. Immersive technologies when a human is inside and the human does not control all the effects that the technologies are influencing. And I would like to introduce the panelists, Mr. Verkhoshinskiy, Alfa-Bank, Tilahun, the Senior Vice President and the Head of the Product Departments in Central and East Europe, Middle East and Africa, and it will be interesting for him to compare the activities and operations in different areas. Mr. Mikhail, UniCredit Bank, Alexander Vedyakhin, the first deputy of the management board of Sberbank, and I have Ilya Polyakov to the left, the chair of the board of Rosbank, and Jeff Hu, regional director of WeChat Pay, Europe, Middle East and Africa, and Mr. Jingwen, director and president of the Department of Quality Business Processes and IT of Huawei. I would like to ask Alexander the first question. The previous dialogue has touched upon of how and what shall we do as a regulator? What our actions in the emerging ecosystem should be. I don't know how the situation is in Europe, and I would like to debate with Mr. Nasri, reference the period of time of 25 years. The ecosystem is here already in this country, and we as a regulator do not understand all the spectrum of services that could be provided to the client. And of course, any service, any company is willing to provide as many services to the client as possible, and different companies are fighting for a client. And how should a person retain the right of choosing things, and how do you define your client, a physical person and business? What do you think the physical persons and businesses need now and in 10 years? Thanks, Olga. There are three major trends what our customers need, both physical and legal persons. They want everything fast, right away, and another thing, they want to have it cheap or even free of charge, and the third thing they want is a customized solution for them. That is, these are the drastic changes of the customer preferences, and it is a fact of life. And every companies and every banks are willing to address these three issues. There is a new customer that is emerging, and if that's the case, then the banks and the companies should adapt themselves. The customers are willing to amuse themselves, and the customers are not willing to get a mortgage. They just want to live in a new apartment. They would like to have this new apartment redecorated, and what is important for the customers to find the services interesting, and as a result of all these trends, the ecosystem is generated, and the customers are selecting from the services that are offered to them in the three areas. If it is customized for the person or for the business, and if it is fast and cheap, and then, as a result, there is a system generated, and if a person would like to exit this particular system or receive services from the other bank, the clients cannot do that because there are barriers to prevent the clients from exiting from the system. Like there are certain requirements that the customer is to meet. You have to do 1, 2, 3, and if not, the tariffs would be increased, and the customer is might be willing to have a free choice, but fails to do that. And I would like to request to ask you to give an answer not as a banker, but as a customer. There was a session at the International Banking Forum, and I used to ask a question there. Forget you're a banker. You're an ordinary person. If you're just an ordinary person, how will you be choosing your bank? And only 2 panelists answered as customers, and the other 5 were giving me an answer as bankers, like linking it to KPI, etc. For example, assume that you have never worked in the bank. As a customer, I would choose Sberbank, but not because I have been working in the organization for 20 years. The 3 criteria are very important for me as a customer. It is the fastness, the price, and customization. If those criteria are met, I will choose it. There is another criteria. It is data safety, data security, something that was discussed in the morning session. And this aspect is very important. And as a customer, you won't be able to know what's the level of protection of data in the organization, because it is some secret mystic knowledge that the organization has, but it does not disclose the information to the customers, to the clients. And they can only do the guesswork. If there were no any issues, problems, then it means everything is okay. But if there is a problem, that's when the customers start screaming. We all have to pass the long way to provide information about where the data is to the customers. It won't have to be 3 pages of text, but it will have to be something simple for the customer to understand where the data is, and the regulator will have to be able to do the oversight and to provide the required degree of comfort to all those who give their data away. Referring to the data, data is of paramount importance, and I think that thing will happen. We have just discussed this thing at the sidelines of the forum. They used to steal money some time ago, and that was the result of the human failure when the mistakes were made by the operator, but no money is stolen. And it's mostly pilfering the personal data, because data costs higher. And you, though, do not announce that you are making the ecosystem, Vladimir, and you have launched X5. You have launched the product with X5. It's your partner. You are developing the products with Alfa-Bank company, insurance company. And will you share, Vladimir, your opinion and your discoveries and solutions that you managed to implement at the level of the group of companies? And another question, what's your perception of a client, of your customer? And what are you doing to satisfy the customer? And I would like to think in the terms of not as a banker, but as a customer, as a human being. You might be working in a different organizations, and so the situation might change in 10 years, depending on what answers we give. Indeed, Alpha Group, Beeline, X5 and Borjomi and the other companies that are part of the group. We have developed the service for X5. It's the traditional cash management, and we have developed the application through open API, and they can process the information about the customer. It's the application for cash pooling. It's an open platform. We have given it to the expert, and they fine-tune it themselves. They do the settings themselves. We do not interfere with their work. I am a believer in technologies, but I am even a stronger believer in humans, and we have a team of experts who are developing the technologies, and I think they are present over here at this forum. And indeed, that's the future rests with that. And we are thinking about the exchange of data. There's the federal laws and the law on the protection of physical data, and we are working within the framework of the legislative framework, how to enrich the customer experience and at the same time to comply with the law. And I think it is time now, the time is ripe for both the banks, the regulators and the customers to get united for the customer to have trust in the actors, and if there is an exchange of information between the trusted operators, the customers will win. Do you think we are ready now to have an open API, to develop some kind of standard for that, to look into the benefits that were generated by the second payment guideline in Europe? Do we need similar requirements that the payment aggregators are to meet, or we do not need that kind of framework? Though the legislature over there is free and it provided the choice from the point of view of open API, but the second half of it, what do companies give to the banks to have information about clients and customers? And this issue is high on the agenda due to the changes to be embraced in Europe, but this issue is important for us as well. We do not have an exchange between the stakeholders and banks. But when we start the process, we will have to analyze the situation both for the banks and for the stakeholders. And I think it would be strange to demand that banks give open API to their competitors. But if it is partners, no wrong with that. I don't know how applicable it is in Russia, but talking about the answer to the second question that you have asked in the beginning, like what's our perception of the customer, of the client, I think the trend is, of course, free choice is important, but the main thing that will define the paradigm of development for the next few years is intuitively clear. There is a term, phygital. It is a mixture, a blending of physical and digital in the West, and the phygital. And I think the new paradigm, and that is something that we have embraced, it is the phygital, and the customers are looking for phygital. Take Uber, for example. You order a taxi, and you have clicked something, but then our physical body will have to be hauled somewhere. So that's the combination of physical and digital experience. Or take a Tinder application, and of course you can have a digital experience, but without physical experience this particular application will not be a success. Or take the delivery of food. And so the combination of physical and digital is actually something that the future depends on, and that's what the customers wish. We in Alfa-Bank are working to this effect, and I think it will not be an exaggeration to claim that Alfa-Bank is the first digital bank. Take SMEs, for example. There are managers that open accounts. But we have provided such digital tools to our managers. So it's only making appointments and information about the customers, integration with the governmental services, the possibilities of providing loans, all the other things. So on one hand, it is the digital platform, and the other thing, it is the physical contact with the customers. And please come to our booth over here, and it is the platform of the future. We have a handshake and smiles with our customers, and it is something that should still exist, but all the other processes are very much digital. So the combination of physical and digital. Phygital is a new digital, or you can word it out like it is the physical with a human face, or digital with a human face. Visa company has been working at the market for some 60 years. If I'm not mistaken, at present there are some 3.5 billion cards. So it's virtually one half of the population that have the products of this payment system. I just wonder, how did they manage for the 60 years when having such a huge database to preserve its confidentiality? And I wish you would tell us how you did manage to preserve the confidentiality of the database. And another question, the competition between the payment cards is shifting to the other tools. What's your perspective in 10 years? Will it be FinTech, Big Tech, or IT company, or will it morph into something different that we cannot even think of? What are your expectations?
Well, thank you for having me and for the great question. Yes, we consider ourselves 60-year-old FinTech, and sometimes with age comes wisdom. But specifically to your question about protection, security is really at the heart of our brand promise to our customers. We take it very seriously. We overinvest in security. But from a practical point of view, we use about, I would say, 4 paradigms on how we deal data. The first one is protection. When we talk about protection, it's obviously making sure that the right and the latest technology of encryption is applied. This is for data that's at rest and also in transit. The second point about protection is rules and making sure that we are strictly managing the usage of data and the storage of data, whether it's at the merchant side or any other parties. So protection of data is really the key. The second point or paradigm for us is what we call devaluing data. What do we mean by that? This is making sure that the data that the consumer has, whether it's the 16-digit PAN or the credit card information, at the chip level, it's EMV chip, so it's encrypted, or the data is tokenized in the e-commerce space. So if the data gets, for some reason, used, it won't be accessible or approachable without the payment system having a knowledge about that. So devaluating the data itself is key. The third area is what we call harnessing the data. So VisaNet, 60 years, 3-point-something odd cards, we process about between 15 to 16,000 transactions per second. Obviously, we've got a massive amount of data. So what we do with that data is not only that we process it, but we really learn the trend of that data. We analyze it, and through our cyber fusion center and our data scientists, we use that data to actually speculate or control any possible fraud activity that we see in the system. The last but not least method that we use is really empowering our consumer through the control that we create for the consumers to be the first line of defense in our security through the use of either giving them control, whether it's transaction level control or what have you, just to make sure that if and when a consumer feels like something is happening, they protect that. Now, again, from a technology point of view, we spend quite a lot of money. We do invest, and our security structure not only looks at the application level, we look at the vast majority of data that we have, as well as the network and the hardware. So there's multiple level of defense that we create, and we continue to do that. But having said that, it's always a race against the bad actors. We stay humble. We always try to know what is going on. Obviously, we partner with other financial institutes, government bodies, and what have you, to always continue to invest and apply the latest and best information in our suite of products that we use. We have one of the best cybersecurity, cyber fusion center. We feel very proud about that, and we continue to harness those. On to your second question about the competition. We don't necessarily believe the newcomers, whether it's the fintechs. We actually do believe that we are still a fintech, even though we are 60-year-old and the word fintech didn't exist since the last 5 years, or our other partners. We believe our main competition is cash, and we do believe that because cash is not the best way for consumers to pay and get paid, and for economies to thrive. A lot of this other commerce or existing companies, I think they do help us to be better than yesterday. But again, at an aggregate level, if you look at the world, we're between 75 to 85% transactions that are happening in cash. So there's enough work for all of us.
Well, of course, it depends on the country that you're looking at. Russia, in this regard, in a very short period of time, starting from 2014, has made a huge leap, not just because our citizens turned out to be more prepared to embrace innovations. It is also due to the fact that a lot of tools were offered by the banks. They were actively investing in infrastructure together with payment companies. Already now, 61% of all transactions in Russia are non-cash. By the end of the year, it will be 65. So if I were you, I would not be too relaxed, thinking that we'll be able to keep the trend just by remaining in the business of payment cards. I think in the whole world there will be very active fight in competition. What are other ways to make payments rather than cards, and some other services might be more competitive in this regard. Now I'd like to address a question to a person who works in the ecosystem. We started by saying that we work to create ecosystem in Russia. Some of us are more successful in that, some are less successful. However, in China, the system has been in existence for a very long time. It is used by 1.1 billion people. And of course, we would like to learn it from the first hand, from the actual practical applicators, why customers choose you. They do it for love or for the great trust they have in you. And what kind of challenges do you face at the moment? I'm talking about WeChat Pay. What kind of difficulties do you encounter? And I'd like to give the floor to our distinguished colleague, Jeff Hu, to take the question.
Okay, thank you for the question. So in terms of our WeChat development, I would like to first explain where we are at the moment, and then I will address our challenge. And so first of all, I guess WeChat, as you mentioned, we have 1.12 billion users. And the reason we're growing to such a large scale is because we actually look at our WeChat or WeChat Pay, this product or service, like a work of art instead of a commercial product. So we really actually try to make this product very simple and very elegant. So it's always a very important topic for us to try to remove the features rather than adding all the features, bundle them together into the product. And also in terms of how we can keep this product very elegant, we, of course, just like Facebook, Instagram's advertisement is a key source of the commercial. But when us, WeChat or WeChat Pay, when we look into this, we think we treat our users as friends, and therefore we wouldn't actually add in too much commercial element. We're trying to be very restrictive, if you like. And also, the second kind of part of our strategy is we always adopt something called like dummy user perspective, if you like. So we really look into how we can put ourselves into the shoes of a very least sophisticated user's perspective. So we have something called like 10 100,000 principle. So in the early years, literally, our product managers gonna interview 10 users and read 100 Twitters or kinds of their comments, and also gather feedback for 1,000 users per month. So this is how we understand our user. But we wouldn't spoil our users well. So it's very similar to what Steve Jobs doing. So we are not only answering the needs of the users, but we are also creating needs. So we did see one challenge previously, that using WeChat as an ecosystem, the users or our customers, it's very difficult to utilize the services provided by thousands of the businesses. To resolve this challenge, then we create something called mini program. So mini program, is like apps within app. So at the moment, within WeChat, it's very popular in China that users, they go to somewhere, scan a QR code using WeChat, then without downloading the application, they have the application within WeChat already. So this need wasn't there before, but we foresee this need and this potential challenge, and then we conquer that. And thirdly, we are very focusing on, say, our ecosystem. So we wouldn't say we're a service provider, but actually we're really building a platform where we're providing all the very important toolkits for the partners and also for the users, so people stay in our platform. And B, we're thinking how we can empower our providers within this platform and then to provide services to the end user, so user can have this immersive experience. So yes, and back to the challenge, I think on the point 3, building this platform, it is actually something we are facing as a challenge, because in China, we already have this system. We know what the users need, we know what the business needs, we know what tools can connect them together and empower different partners to serve both. But talking about the globalization, we are looking at how in different regions, say the region I'm looking after, the EMEA region, how I can make sure this ecosystem in this region is more relevant and also is more kind of powerful.
Tell us, please, has regulators supported your inactivity, or maybe it was not just interfering in your activity? What was the position of regulator?
Thank you. Yeah. So I think it has to be very clear which regulator you were referring to. If it's China, then sorry, it's actually not my business territory. But then if it's saying it's EMEA region, then to be honest, we don't have such an issue because of our business model. So basically, while we're developing ourselves within, say, EMEA region, our model is we focus on partnership. Still, we have the ecosystem, but when it comes to the payment partner kind of ecosystem, we work with the local partners. So some names, like locally actually, I wouldn't mention names, but many major banks or payment providers in today's session, they're already our partners. So they take care of the merchant, and then they handle the settlement, and then they handle the local regulation. And from ourselves, of course, we're also looking at how the local financial landscape is involved. Say stuff like GDPR mentioned previously, we are definitely working on that and make sure we're compliant, and also BSD2, basically we're trying to work on that. But as I mentioned, if we're following our current business model, we're more relying on our local partners in this local country.
Thank you very much. So depending on the region or on the country, you select a list of partners that you work with, and you as a partner remain open for other partnerships, right?
That's a good question. So as I mentioned earlier, we are creating something called open platform. So it's not like a platform where we select the partner. So it's an idea which is quite similar to open API, I guess. So basically, whenever any partners would like to join our platform, you can already go to our website and then register yourselves, and then of course providing relevant certificate and evidence, and then you can already building a technical integration, and also to become our kind of payment service provider partner, and then you can also apply through that channel. Because the local regulation and compliance is very complex within EMEA, so our ecosystem is open, but whenever we're onboarding a partner, then we are still heavily involved to make sure they have the right qualifications so we can together serve the users and business. But in the future, hopefully, we can make sure this process is streamlined so that, we don't have to do much, and then partner comes over, become our partners, and then, improve themselves.
Thank you very much. At the beginning of the 2019, you as a company launched a credit sparing customer-to-customer loan service based on your app. So you were using the scoring of the behavior of the transactions on the data you get from the customer, the way the customer behaves within your system. Can you tell us more about this scoring system, and how do you think, what kind of novelties will it bring to you as a company?
Okay, so this credit score system is actually, we call it WeChat Pay Score. And basically the basis is we assess the users based on their kind of financial behavior. So the score, it comes from a range of factors, including the customer's characteristics, their payment history, payment behavior, and contract fulfilling capability as well. And we launched this feature last year, actually. And we see this feature is, again, one part of the service within our ecosystem to make sure users could enjoy a much simpler and more efficient lifestyle. And also, we're opening this service to the our partners within our ecosystem, so they can build service integrating our credit score capability, and then they can provide the service to the users. So each party within our ecosystem can be benefited. Oh, sorry, what's the second question? Sorry.
It's all right, you have answered. Alexander, how will you compete with this system, or are you partners? Good question. It's a question for the regulator, I think. It's always like that. When there is no answer, you refer to the regulator. I think it's common for men. When there is no answer, we turn to women. Okay. However, talking serious, when there are large vigorous company with huge experience behind their back. We do not have that kind of experience. We will have to gain it, but we will have to compete. And all the same, the customers cannot receive the services and products with all the companies. What should be the strategy adopted by the Russian companies? I think the strategy should be intended for targeting customers, because it's up to the client to choose the ecosystem. If they feel comfortable with the ecosystem covering all the requirements, all the needs of the customer, it is giving high quality, fast and cheap, then the customers will stay put with the ecosystem. But the higher the competition, the better it is for the customers, though. But it's quite good for the stakeholders, for the players as well. It's good for the customers, so that's why we are in favor of competition. So we are. Okay, how fast we should travel along this way that the foreign companies have covered in 30 or 60 years. We cannot carbon copy everything, because sometimes the customers wish something different. And in Europe, the FinTech companies are turning to the banks. There are many payment companies that provide that kind of services. And I know that our customers trust banks, and that's why they go to banks. But the ecosystem should provide different services. I do not want to keep the warranty of the washing machine for God knows how long time. But sometimes the system does not provide the services which are in demand. Will we survive in this ecosystem, or do you think it is much more convenient to form partnerships with the FinTech and find niche being some part of the system, or set up new systems? I don't think there is only one correct answer, and we are entering a partnership with Alibaba. There's a Sberbank. There are some other major players like Alfa-Bank is becoming an ecosystem in itself, and every entity has got its own approaches, and it's up to the customer to take their pick. And we are still working on the customers to move from another company to another, but we are working on that. Yes, I'm aware about that. Thank you. And I have a question for Mr. Tao Jingwen. And Huawei is the major IT company, and it is a competitive company at the IT market. Why didn't you turn into the FinTech company, or Big Fin? You could have become one long time ago. Why not? Don't you see yourself in this niche? And if not, what are you planning to be specializing in the next 10 years?
Okay, thank you very much. Actually, that's Huawei is not a FinTech company. That's Huawei is a high-tech company. We are a technology company that's to provide the ICT solution for this all the industry, because Huawei's vision is bring digital to every people, every home, and every organization to build the fully connected, intelligent world is our vision. So Huawei, we are a high-tech companies. We are provide all the connect and the computing technology for the all industry. Finance industry is connect the data quite early, and also this digitalized level is high than the other industry. We think that Huawei to provide the FinTech technology, we are focused on the three areas to help the finance company to quickly got their customer, and that's to provide their service, speed up their services innovation ability. We are reshape the platform for the finance companies, because as before, most of the finance company is a closed and a legacy platform. It's not a cloud-based open architecture. So there is a response for the new services is very slow. For example, that's just the Tencent mentioned. They became a finance company that is because of their social network. I still remember that year, just in the Chinese Spring Festival, 3 days, they connect 300 million credit card with one service called Lucky Draw. So how they can have this capability? If we talk a traditional finance bank provide internet or new services, at least you need 6 months more, or even a year to prepare to launch these services. So, but you need a new architecture, upgrade to a new architecture. This is Huawei's responsible. We are focused on to help finance company to build a new platform. The second one we call the reshape the data. Because as before, most of the finance companies, the data is a legacy, is belong to the different system. I used to talk with the Chinese bank. I used that bank for more than 20 years ago. From my first career, my salary is in that bank. But when I buy a house or buy apartment, I need loans. They always give me inches, tables, date sheet, let me fill. They always ask the question, who is you? How much salary every month for you? They know actually, because my 20 years salary is in that bank. I have 5 years experience in working in Europe. For Deutsche Bank, the same things happened again. So I think in the data, in the traditional finance company, the data is separated. It cannot be integrated to serve for the customer. The three things we are focused on to provide to reshape the services. As before, if you want finance services, you need to go to the banker, you need to go to the desk. You only have the 5 times 8. You can go to the services. I used to have a joke. I received a call from Deutsche Bank, called me Mr. Tall. Do you need the finance services? In your bank account, you have too much money. No use. Why you don't buy some of the product for me? I told I just want shopping. But I don't have time to shopping because they don't give me enough credit because every month, every day I just can collect 500 euros from the bank, cash. When I want to shopping, the shop is closed. So it's very difficult to let the customer easily to use the finance services. So Huawei is focused on this. But we also notice the new finance FinTech will be used widely. Huawei is enterprise. Huawei's business, every year we sold out 200 million pieces of different smart device, like this device. We will use this smartphone device. Huawei also have Huawei Pay. That means that we want integrated some of the finance services from our finance partners from different banks into Huawei's social network and logistic ecosystem. And Huawei's global business, every year, we have 170 countries. We have 100 billion transactions per year in our logistic. How to integrate the finance partners services into Huawei's ecosystem is what we want pilot into our own business. So this is, we call this is internal FinTech to serve Huawei's the money operations efficiency. So actually, Huawei is a high-tech company. It's not a FinTech company. We are support the finance company to get more advanced infrastructure and quickly to respond to the customer's requirements. Like we have a digitalization platform to help the finance companies to quickly respond to customer service. Thanks.
Спасибо. Хорошая новость.
Thank you. The good news is that Huawei will not be the payment platform in the near future. They will be the IT company, but at the same time, Huawei has launched a Huawei Pay service. Will you talk about Huawei Pay service that you have launched?
Huawei Pay is just one platform. I just mentioned is because of the Huawei's we sold out 200 million pieces of the smartphone or smart device every year. So how to let the customer in this shopping or the online services experience to easily to integrate our finance partners to easily to pay to Huawei, to easily to get some that's the credits or the awards, to quickly to get the services. So we want to improve our customers' buy or the journey, customer journey, into the Huawei shopping, Huawei's mall. We have a V Mall that's to use to buy Huawei's products. So we provide finance solutions that's called Huawei Pay. Huawei Pay is not the only platform. We are integrated to that platform. We also integrate to WeChat Pay, 支付宝, and also the Google Pay outside, and also that's our partners in Russia, like that's Sberbank and all the others. So we want to build an open system to let our customer, when they buy Huawei's equipment or Huawei's terminal, they can have a fantastic experience or the fantastic customer journey. That is our services. Huawei Pay is the only solutions. That means that we are integrated with our channel and our consumers is a link for that's Huawei's device holders. For example, if you are buying a device before, then if you rebuy it, you can get some rewards and you can get some that saving. We have some different services to return to the old customer. So this is improves Huawei's link with our consumers. That is the kind of service.
Спасибо большое.
Thanks a lot. I have a question for two attendees, for two panelists, Mikhail and Ilya. UniCredit Bank is a member of large European groups, and we have talked at length how the situation is different in Russia, Europe, and Asia with respect to the degree of penetration and customer profile. And I used to ask a question, one of the regulators, you do not regulate Bitcoin cryptocurrencies, and the answer was, why should they? Because our customers will not be buying it. It means that mentality, mindset in different countries is different. Some citizens of some country buy something or they do not. So how does group work, operate in Europe and in Russia in terms of innovation and FinTech? Are there any differences, or are the approaches and mindset the same? And what are the challenges when we talk about immersive FinTech? Mikhail, will you be the first to give an answer? First of all, I would like to thank all those present with the Day of the Psychological Health, and this day was instituted some time ago, and I think all those working in our industry need to be tranquil and quiet and reasonable, because sometimes I am under the impression that either something is wrong with us or the other participants of the market lost their mind. The stakeholders might invest heavily, attract millions, and then get bankrupt. Business is good, but we do not play this game. We have a lot of money of our customers, and it was mentioned today that one can like banks or dislike banks, but the most important capital of the banks is trust, and our task is to preserve the wealth of the clients, of the customers, and it's not necessarily a must to be leaders in some businesses. We should provide the banking services, and the point is that if you are not capable to provide a service which your competitors could do present over here, you will just vanish. The situation is changing real fast, and things are being copied, and there is a book with the title Steal Like an Artist, and everything is being creatively generated, and sometimes it is not profitable to be the forerunner. You can let the leader lead the way, and we, as the participants of the group of companies, do implement the state-of-the-art technologies at the highest possible levels. We support all the good things against the bad things, but we should tread carefully, and I am not of the position that FinTech will drive the banks from the business. It's just a dog that occurred to me. Friedrich Engels asked Marx, what will happen? Like revolution and expropriation of the exploiters, what will happen to our factory? And he said, the revolution will be there and the expropriation of the exploiters will be there, but well, you should not be in a hurry to pawn the factory. You'll still need it. So that's why the banks should interact with the FinTech, and I think that's what will happen in the future. As far as our position in Europe is concerned, the regulation is quite heavy. The GDPR was mentioned today, and the other initiatives, and we are exposed to these nice things as well. The situation in Asia might be better. There's more freedom is given over there, and it was mentioned in the morning session that it is very important to find a balance of not being the regulation being too tight, but at the same time not to give a free rein to everybody. And there is no one-size-fits-all answer. I remember the market of 90s, and there were two regulators then, and there were two approaches. The two regulators were fighting each other. One regulator was adhering to the policy of having tight, strict policies, and the infrastructure was developing to meet the requirements of this particular regulator, and like MISEX emerged as a result of the first approach. And the other was saying, okay, let them develop as they are, we will then tighten the rules later. And I think it is important to set up the rules. And when the rules are changing, when everything is allowed, and then there are constraints instituted, it's no good. But no matter at what point the balance is reached, it is important for the regulation to be stable and predictable, because it is most important for us to know the regulations and rules well in advance. 2 weeks more will pass. I don't know whether Brexit will take place or not. I do not know, but if Durov will not issue grammar cryptocurrency, he will have to pay a lot of money. And we have to understand what will be allowed and what will be prohibited in the near future, because the sooner the rules are solidified, the better it will be for all.
Mikhail, over to you. Europe has already been working with the second payment directive. I'm not going to repeat it, but please tell us from your viewpoint what we should not repeat from what our European colleagues have done. What is over-regulated and is standing in the way of business development? Can you cite some example? Well, I would say the key thing whenever you want to introduce regulation, do not over-regulate. There are many different restrictions that make doing business almost impossible. I can cite the following example from this directive. We were requested to apply this directive to all our customers. Then it turned out that the PSD2 directive applies to the EU citizens only. Then the question is, why we, being as Russian bank, going to apply this directive on Russian customers? But sometimes the problem is not of regulation itself, but of the interpretation. Sometimes the compliance departments are willing to be more saint than the saint themselves, or the Pope. So we have to be reasonable there as well. Sometimes they are applying and interpreting the directive way too broadly and way too precisely. So we have to be reasonable and we have to understand what the regulator actually meant us to do. So that is where we have to be cautious. Thank you. Ilya, over to you. Please share with us your experience. Indeed, compliance can be very scary. I remember that from my previous career. Sometimes compliance department is not actually supervising the procedures. They are simply coming up with new regulations, and a fair business cannot simply go through this compliance and cannot work properly. You, from the viewpoint of Rosbank Group, and from what you do in Russia, how do you tackle this issue? Thank you for the question, Olga. Good afternoon. Before I answer this very exciting question, I would like to thank all the organizers of the forum. I think from year to year, the Finnopolis is becoming more exciting. Even this year, the titles of the sessions, Immersive, FinTech, and many others, are very exciting and they're very inspiring. And Laurent Nisri, the CEO of Paris FinTech Forum, who is probably the best fintech forum in the world. I know that the representative of Central Bank of Russia also participate there. Probably feels it as well that there is a serious competitor coming up in Russia. Finnopolis is indeed very competitive, and it is great to have Laurent Nisri with us and having the exchange of opinion between those two big platforms. Coming to the question, compliance is a very tricky issue and a very broad one. But of course, it impacts not just the banks. Compliance is the direct relationship between the regulator and the banks. And all around the world, banks are encountering increasing requirements from the side of regulators. So in this situation, banks are struggling. Especially the international groups have to comply with the international regulators' requirements, and that makes it increasingly difficult. And the banks that might have good and efficient compliance system within the bank might consider it as a strong competitive advantage on the market. It is an important issue for everyone, but the right management in terms of compliance enables you to be more competitive. Well, I would say regulation is tricky. It is important not to over-regulate. It is bad even for the regulator. But it is also an issue for the internal compliance departments of the bank. Compliance must not stand in the way of the healthy business development. You're right in saying that. Undoubtedly, we also participated in international forums. It is very interesting for us to watch how the sector is developing in different countries and different continents. Last time I've been to the FinTech Forum in Paris. So I'm wrong. I'm right. You've been there. Yes. And I was surprised to see that Mr. Udar, being the president of Société Générale, was speaking about the innovations in the group. And for some reasons, he was speaking about the innovations of the group in Africa. And I was very sad that he didn't mention anything else. He left very quickly, but I was willing to ask him, why, speaking about the group, you focus on Africa, but say nothing about the business of the group in Russia? And according to the latest data of Boston Consulting Group, over the last 8 years, Russian market has become a driver of non-cash payments in Europe and is ranked #1 in terms of cards and other non-cash payments in Europe. Is Mr. Udar so serious that in Russia everything is going well anyway? Or maybe he decided to focus on Africa because he is not well aware, or maybe he's not considering Russia to be advanced enough from the viewpoint of innovations? Do you want a frank answer? Well, Laurent Nisri requested him to focus on Africa. That's why he was speaking about Africa. But if we go into the detail, the actual answer would be that Russia is actually on the opposite edge of development of technologies as compared to the group and compared to the whole world. That is probably why he decided not to focus on Russia, because the topic of that panel was on accessibility of financial services, and in this regard, Africa is obviously the continent where accessibility of financial services is issue number one, while the advancement of digital technologies is not that accurate. We are very big in Africa, as you know, we invest in digital development, but there it is on a much more basic level of development. Not everybody has smartphones and tablets, therefore different solutions are required, but we're working on that, and since you've heard about it there, I'm not going to comment about it now. Okay, so let's focus on Russia. Speaking of Russia, within the group, Russia is considered as one of the key hubs for development of innovations. It's not just because we have a great team at Rosbank Russia, but it is also due to the statistics that you've just named. Russia is a leader in many areas, including being top 3 of the most advanced countries together with Singapore and other countries in terms of the share of tokenized payments. So everybody acknowledges Russia as one of the leaders from the viewpoint of digital development. Société Générale is globally investing in innovations and is considered to be one of the most advanced banks in Europe from the viewpoint of innovation strategy. It is diverse. We develop innovations internally. We cooperate with FinTechs. We enter into partnerships. Sometimes we buy FinTech companies. We grow our own startups. We also have an initiative called Internal Startup Call, where globally Société Générale is developing startups domestically and is using them within the group. Okay, so you grow startups within the company and you bring it out to the market. Yes, that's what we do. That is an initiative enabling employees with great initiative to leave their daily routine for a certain period of time. They get guarantees that they will get back if their startup initiative fails. They get certain subsidies and financing for the startup development. Of course, we select the best startup ideas on the level of Société Générale. Some of them skyrocket and they become individual companies or become part of the bank and contribute to the innovative development of the group. In Russia, we follow the innovative strategy of Société Générale, but of course we are aiming to be more than just followers. We try to be in the forefront on certain aspects where we have best competences within the group. And Frederick and the group generally have been thinking a lot how to create a system where isolated innovations could be used for the benefit of the big group. And today, the initiative was adopted to set up different competence centers within the expertise. And in Russia, we'll be playing a more important role for the whole group on the competences of instant payments, fast payments. And the fast payment system is the key example of how quickly those services are growing in Russia. And we actively participate in all of those initiatives and pilot projects connected with the first and later stages of development. As for the customer experience in digital, user experience in digital is another issue that we develop in Russia, will be the center of competences for the whole group. And another thing I wanted to say about our group is that we try to combine innovations with another element which is no less important, and that is social and corporate responsibility. We combine the two into one because those two are the key paradigms of development of Société Générale. And a great example of combination of the two is the following. Within our group, we have a startup that we purchased from the market. It's called Bluemore. That is a crowdfunding platform that is scouting investment into renewable energy sources. Initially, it was an individual company on the market and was the only way for those willing to invest in the renewable energy sources. Normally, that requires project financing, but that one enabled private financing. And Societe Generale was doing a lot of project financing in this area, so we thought it would be good to combine our competences with a startup. We purchased the startup, we integrated its team in our bank, and now within the bank, it works with us, and that is a great example of how you can combine corporate and social responsibility and issue of sustainable development and innovations. And this forum, we continue driving this topic further. We developed the concept of combination of technologies and art. And I'd like to invite all of you to visit our stand, where we showcase how technologies beautifully combine with technologies and art. May you please add something to that? First of all, I'd like to join my colleague in very high assessment of the level of this forum. From year to year, it is becoming more and more advanced. It is something indeed to be proud of. As for what Ilya was saying, indeed, I would not underestimate the importance of European experience. In Europe, there are many exciting innovations, despite rather rigid regulation, and application of this experience in Russia sometimes provide for interesting results. Well, of course, in Russia we have a lot of homegrown experiences as well that are not known in Europe. For example, the Federal Law 54 and the huge amount of online cashier desks that have been implemented, gathered online, is unique to Russia. And if we go through the online digitalization of the whole transactions on products and services, then we would create huge data sets that would enable us to change the whole scoring system and the issue of loan provision that would enable us to make it an automatic function without participation of banks or individuals. And speaking of regulations, sooner or later, we will have to adopt the creation of equal playground. It's not fair when banks have to comply with so many things, both European regulations and Russian regulation. And on the other hand, we see that startups and FinTech companies are not monitored by the regulator. And you might force us to share data with them, and it was mentioned today as well. We should adopt the same approach to those who store and accumulate this data, and then it would create an equal playground for everyone. And of course, we have to think of the individual's right protection that should be in the center of everything. We are all now factories producing information. We have smartphones in our hands, whether we like it or not. We take selfies and SMS and photos and videos. Those are huge information flow, and somebody stores them. And those are bigger assets than having monetary assets. And it is important to bear in mind who and how is using them. So probably it would make sense to analyze those issues in a very serious manner. And I'm simply going mad every time I go anywhere. I have to sign a paper with the protection of personal data processing. But this consent means nothing. I have no idea where all that is going to. There must be some kind of platform providing us with a clear understanding who knows what about me and what they can do with my data, so that you can recall your consent if something goes wrong. That is a huge scope of issues that we will discuss in the future, and it would take months and years to do that, but there is certainly exciting time coming ahead. Well, it's time to wrap up, but I'd like to ask one more question to my Russian colleagues. Please be brief. You know the current situation. You know what we've just discussed. We're aware of the potential challenges. If you were to answer the question, would you like to open up a new bank from scratch? You have limited capital, you have a desire to open up a bank. My first question, would you do that? And I'm talking about opening a bank in Russia. And my second question, what type of business model would you choose? Vladimir, over to you. I would open a bank in Russia. It is an exciting time in Russia at the moment. There are less and less barriers for the banks and more of choice. In a year, we have plus 1 million of active users of individuals, and the SMEs database of ours increased by 1.5 times. In Russia, if you're even the second, and sometimes means we're the first. I ask you about opening a new bank. Oh, I'm coming there. The potential for redistribution of the market shares is growing. And in this regard, digital development of Russia is massive, which means that you can develop a business. And of course, the model has to be digital. All right, thank you, Mikhail. I really like banking business. And I think it will be there for a very long time. It is an exciting area to work in. If I were to create a new bank from the scratch, undoubtedly you should do that. But it has to be a digital bank, and I fully agree to what Vladimir just said. A system is efficient if a machine is efficient in working with a human being. AI and a human being. A bank with a human face, but high intellectual potential, no matter whether it is artificial intelligence or some other kind of intelligence, that is undoubtedly our future. Alexander? Certainly, yes. I would start with digital, would go to phygital, would use the fast payment system, and so on and so forth. Ilya? Certainly, yes. And certainly it would be a digital bank so that I would not have to depend on the old IT systems that are a lot of headache for many banks. In our group, we're having an experience of creation of online bank from the scratch. That is Boursorama bank existing within the group. That is already the biggest online bank in France and in Europe. By the way, lately, we've launched advertising of Boursorama in France with Brad Pitt as a key character in our commercial. So if you're a fan of Brad Pitt, please watch our commercial. So my answer would certainly be yes, a digital bank. New banks, welcome. We can't wait to have you in Russia. All the players on the market said that there is a niche, there are new opportunities, and there is a desire for consumers to find new players on the market so that they compete with you. Olga, wait, you just asked all Russians. You should answer the question as well. Yes, I would also certainly open a bank, and I would join the fast payment system for sure. All right, many thanks for participation. Very timely.